Hi, in today's video, we're going to go over what paperwork you need if you're selling your home by owner. What do you need to do after you actually find a buyer? We're going to cover that in today's video, and we're going to start right now. Okay, in today's video, we're going to cover what you need to do after you have found a buyer for your home. If you're selling your home by owner, what paperwork do you actually need? How do you do it? How do you get started? What do you need to do next? Okay, now here's the first thing. Number one, I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving you legal advice. You should seek your own professional legal advice. Real estate is a complicated transaction, and if you don't understand something, you should seek legal counsel. Okay, now with that being said, what do you need to do after you find a buyer for your home? Okay, and if no agent is involved, okay, what steps do you need to take next? Okay, the first thing you'd like to do, or the first thing you should do, is to either, if you don't have an attorney and if you don't have a realtor involved, then you want to at least involve a title company. Okay, and a lot of title companies, what they'll have is they'll have a packet for you. Okay, and so you can go out to the title company and they can mail you a packet, or you can go pick it up. Okay, but in that packet, they're going to have some items. Okay, now that first item that they're going to have is a purchase agreement. And I'll kind of show you what a packet looks like. Okay, and these are thanks to the folks at Omaha National Title in Omaha, Nebraska. This is what their packet looked like. Okay, now I want to say one more thing, and that is each state has their own rules and regulations for real estate. Okay, so what may apply in Nebraska may not apply in Iowa. Okay, so this is general information. Again, I'm not giving you legal advice, but you want to at least contact a title company from your state in order to get their packet. Okay, now the first thing that they're going to have in the packet is going to be a purchase agreement. Okay, and again, if no realtor is involved, if a real estate agent is involved, then the real estate agent will provide you with a contract. But the purchase agreement, and this is what it looks like. Okay, and this one is 5 pages. Okay, and that's the first thing that's going to be in the packet of information. Okay, is a purchase agreement. Okay, now the next thing in the purchase agreement is if the buyers are doing a FHA loan or a VA loan, then there's going to be a thing called an FHA amenatory clause or a VA escape clause. Okay, and what this document is, here's how this document works. Okay, for example, if the buyer is doing a VA loan, then let's say they're buying the home for $200,000. When the buyer is obtaining financing, the home has to appraise for $200,000. Or the buyer can say, you know what, hey, I don't want it, and back out of the contract. So that's what the VA escape clause is. Okay, and the same thing goes for the FHA amenatory clause, only it just kind of says it in a different way. It says that if you're buying the home for $200,000 purchase price, then the home has to be worth $200,000. Okay, so basically these documents say the same thing, but one's called, if it's FHA, it's an FHA amenatory clause, and then a VA, it's a VA escape clause. Okay, so that's going to be another document that's in your packet. Okay, now the next document is going to be a closing information sheet. Okay, and this is going to have all the information from the buyer and the seller. And you want to fill this form out completely and give this to the title company. Okay. Now the next document is going to be a seller release of loan information. Okay, when you get that contract, when you have a fully executed contract signed by the buyers and the sellers, then you're going to provide that to the title company. The title company is going to have the seller complete this document, and it's going to release that information to the title company. So what they can do is order a loan payoff. Okay, so that's what that document is. And they're also going to ask you for your social security number. Okay. This next document is a real estate certification. And that's going to be another document. For a government loan, it's required, but the title company is going to have you sign this document as well. All right, this next document is called the Seller Property Condition Disclosure Statement. Okay, if you're a seller, you're going to complete this document. Now, this is one of the most important documents you're going to fill out. If you end up in a courtroom, it's probably going to be over this document. So you want to fill it out completely and honestly. Okay, now on this document, and the buyers and sellers are going to initial each page. Okay, but if you look at page 2 on this document, it says part 2 in sections A, B, C, and D. If the answer to any item is yes, explain the condition in the comments section in part 3 of this disclosure statement. Okay, for example, let's say in this question right here, it says, has the roof leaked? Okay, let's say a couple years ago you did have a leak. Then you would mark yes. And then on page 4 in the comment section, you would put part 2, section A, question 3. The roof leaked several years ago. We had it repaired by a qualified contractor, and we've had no issues since. So you've explained the condition in the comment section. Okay, and then what you're going to do if you're the seller is you're going to sign this document and date this document. Okay, and the buyer is going to do the same thing. Okay, now this next document is called a lead-based paint and or lead-based paint hazards form. Okay, and this is an EPA form, and the seller is going to complete this, and then the buyer is going to complete this. And if there was an agent involved, the agent would also initial here, the listing agent, and then the agents, both the buyer and seller agents would sign at the bottom. But in this case, I want to note one thing on this document here. It says, purchaser has received the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. That wasn't in this packet, but where would I get that packet? You can just simply go to Google and type in Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. It's a HUD document and it'll pull up on Google. But this is what that pamphlet looks like. Okay. All right. And the other thing that was not in the packet, but if you are buying a home in Omaha, you want to be aware of this. Okay, Northeast Omaha is a lead Superfund area. Okay, so there's high concentration of lead in the soil in those homes, because way back in the day where the Quest Center is and by the baseball stadium where TD Ameritrade Park is, there used to be a lead smelting plant. Okay, and what that did is all those contaminants polluted North Omaha. So if you're a buyer and you're a buyer buying a home in Omaha, this wasn't actually in the packet, the first sale by owner packet, but I wanted to bring it to your attention so that way you're aware of it. But it just discloses that that area is in a lead Superfund area. Okay, and then I want to point out another resource, and that's down here at the bottom. It's omahalead.org. Okay, so let's say you're buying a property in Northeast Omaha and you want to know more about that property. You can go to omahalead.org. Okay, and then you can type in the address. Okay, and I'm just going to type in an address of one of my rental properties. Okay, because that's a property that's in that area. And you can type in that address, okay, And up here at the top, it gives you a link to the assessor. Okay. But then you can also see what has been done to that property, and you can see any letters that are involved from the EPA. So when I go to sell this property, then I'll have to disclose this and provide them this documentation. Okay. But a lot of sellers may not be aware of that. But anyway, it'll exactly show you. And what they did was the EPA designated that area. They test the soil. Then they came out and gave me new soil and new sod on that property. So they replaced the topsoil and replace it with clean soil. And then they dispose of that old soil. So that's what that is. But that's something that you want to be aware of, because if you're moving into Omaha, you may not be aware of it. Okay. And I didn't see that it was in the packet of information. But that's okay. A lot of folks may not be aware of it. But if you are buying a home in Northeast Omaha, I wanted you to be aware of it. Okay? All right. That's the lead-based paint document. Okay, so there's your packet of information. Now, if you're selling your home by yourself and you don't want to use an agent, now you're going to be money ahead if you do use an agent. But if some folks don't want to, and I understand that, you're putting your home on the market, you want to get that packet from the title company right away. Okay. And that way you can read through all these documents so you can understand them. That way, when that buyer comes along, and let's say the buyer doesn't have representation, that way you can at least get the process started. Okay, so that's what the packet of information looks like. Okay, now once you find that buyer, you're going to need to provide the title company with a fully executed contract. Okay, and what that means, it has to be signed by the buyers and by all the sellers. Okay, and if there's any addendums involved, those have to be signed as well. If they're doing a VA or FHA loan, then they need to sign the FHA amendatory clause or the VA escape clause. If you want to complete that information sheet, you're going to complete the seller authorization payoff, the real estate certification. We talked about the seller property disclosure statement, and you'll also need to collect an earnest deposit check. Okay. Typically, what you'll do in a for sale by owner situation, and it has to be agreed by all parties, is the earnest money will be made out directly to the title company, and they'll hold it in escrow. Okay, so it'll be, and that is a negotiable amount. There's no set earnest deposit amount. Typically, what you'll see is usually around 1% of the purchase price of the property. But if that's a buyer writes that earnest deposit check, it's cashed right away, it's held in escrow, and it'll be applied to the purchase price at closing. Okay, and then you're going to turn those documents into the title company. The title company, what they're going to do at that point, they're going to order a title commitment. They're going to do research on the property to make sure what liens are involved on that property. Okay, the other thing that the title company is going to do, and this is, they're going to order a termite inspection of the property, because usually in order to get financing, they're going to require a termite inspection. Okay, so they're going to order that. And if the buyer decides to do a plot plan, they'll also order a plot plan. And they're going to send off the payoff letters. Now, the other thing you're going to have to do is, with that fully executed purchase agreement, you want to provide a copy of that to the lender. And you want to get that to the lender right away. Okay? And what's going to happen is the title company will prepare the documents necessary for the seller's signature and schedule the sellers to come in and sign before closing. Okay, and that's called the deed set. Okay, they're going to sign the deed set, and when the seller comes in to sign that deed set, they're going to need to bring in a valid government issued ID. Now, the other thing that you may not be aware of, but at closing, The only person that has to show up is the buyer. The seller does not have to show up at closing. The seller actually signs their portion of the paperwork a few days or maybe a week before actual closing occurs. Okay. Now, the other thing that the title company is going to do, if you're a for sale by owner, is they're going to balance the closing figures with the lender and provide you with closing numbers. Okay. Now, at closing, again, closing is a buyer event. The buyer's going to show up to closing. The buyer's going to need to bring a valid government issued ID and either a cashier's check or a wire at closing. Now, this is something you want to be very careful of, okay? And never, ever, ever, if you learn nothing else from this video, never, ever accept wiring instructions via email from the title company. They're never going to send you wiring instructions via email. Most of the correspondence via email will be by secure email from the title company, because here's what's happening. Okay, what we're seeing, and I did a video on this, you can check that out, and that is one of the big scams that's having is criminals, bad actors from Russia and that sort of thing. What they're doing is they're hacking into people's emails, and it looks like it's coming from the title company. Okay, so they'll send a buyer an email saying, hey, why are the instructions here? And if you follow those instructions, you've just sent that money to Russia. So you want to make sure that you never, ever, ever accept wiring instructions via email. Okay, it'll be by secure email from the title company, and they will call. You don't want to, if you get an email telling you to wire funds and then they send you a phone number, don't call that number. Call the title company directly. Okay. Now, after closing is complete, okay, the buyer is going to close on the property, and then about an hour after closing, then the seller can come out and collect their closing packet, and they'll have a check for you. So that's kind of the overview of the for sale by owner process. Okay, and what we'll do in a future video is we'll kind of go through the contract more in detail to give you some idea of what's going on in the purchase contract itself. But anyway, if you have any questions, give me a holler. You make it a great day.